Tonight, the tropics dying down as the demise of Hurricane Darby begins. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 13th. Well, here we are with another bulletin, and it looks like there is only one cyclone still active around the wide world of tropics, and that is Hurricane Darby, which has begun weakening, now down to barely Category 3 status. Likely will be going down to Category 2 after the publishing of this bulletin. 35 storms remains the total for this year so far, 92 the average for the entire year. It's day 43 of Atlantic hurricane season, and we have that Gulf of Mexico area of interest. Chances are decreasing on that due to land interaction. We're down to 10% chance of that forming in the next 5 days. Same chances for the next 2 days, actually. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 60, and we have Hurricane Darby at Category 3. We also have an area of interest to the south of Mexico with an 80% chance of formation. It is likely that that will be the next tropical system. Could be the next hurricane even, based off of what the models have been suggesting. In the Western Pacific, chances have dropped to 0 on Invest 90W. We were getting a little bit of a fighting chance for last night, at least personally I was, but it looks like every single model has now finally dropped that one, and it looks like that won't be developing anytime soon, or any part rather. In the North Indian Ocean, we have Invest 95B, that is inland and has literally no chance of formation because of that, and needless to say, I think it's pretty obvious why it would have no chance of formation. Other than that, it's pretty much what you typically expect. Monsoonal activity and JTWC designated random invest because they can. Anyways, moving on into the satellite imagery, you can see what we have with Hurricane Darby. Its eye is starting to degrade. It's become more asymmetrical in recent hours as the environmental factors are starting to take a toll on it. Wind shear is going to be rapidly rising. Sea surface temperatures are going to be decreasing. Everything's going to be becoming a lot more hostile for Darby soon. Looking at the Atlantic, you can see what's going on here. There's an extratropical low to the west of the Iberian Peninsula. An extratropical low probably trying to get itself to the east of Newfoundland. Other than that, you can see the disturbance that's producing heavy rainfall across the northern Gulf of Mexico. In the Eastern Pacific, you can quite clearly see Hurricane Darby. It's a very small hurricane. You can also see the area of interest to the south of Mexico. That's probably going to become that next storm to the right there. It's starting to get itself together a little bit. In the Western Pacific, it's a mess. You can see a frontal system that appears to be traversing into the main part of the Western Pacific. Other than that, there's a monsoonal mess to the southeast of the Mariana Islands, and it's a monsoonal mess in the North Indian Ocean, as you would expect. You can hardly tell what 95B is because it's kind of meshed in with the monsoonal activity, so there really is no way to tell besides 95B has a lack of convection as it is. Southwest Indian Ocean is pretty dry, nothing going on. About what you would typically expect and what has been the case for several weeks now. Nothing new to report here. Australian region also looking pretty dry. Looks like the entire continent is seeing, at the very most, partly cloudy skies, or clear skies for that matter. Nothing going on in New Caledonia or New Zealand, much for that matter. Looking at the sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific, you can see what's going on. 28 to 29 degrees Celsius temperatures to the south of Mexico. As you head westwards, those temperatures do decrease. As you head into the Gulf of Mexico, those temperatures are around 30 to 31 in the Gulf of Mexico before dropping into the 28 to 29 range in the Caribbean. Main development region remaining around 27 to 28. Same can be said for the Western Atlantic, especially with the Gulf Stream where those temperatures are warmer. Subtropics remaining around 25 to 26 at this time. Going on to the North Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea is around 29 in the northern part before dropping down to 24 and 25 as you head southwest. Bay of Bengal, it's around 28 to 29 throughout the entirety of the basin. And as you go into the Western Pacific, those 30 degrees Celsius temperatures are starting to recover in the aftermath of Chaba and Iri. Pretty much more prominent in between the Philippines and Taiwan, and going hundreds of miles eastwards. The southern hemisphere is starting to see those temperatures continue to drop to the 26 degree isotherm. The immediate coast of Australia around 22 to 23 at this point. Looking into the sea surface temperature anomalies, you can see the Atlantic is still above average in the tropical regions. The subtropics are running below now. Eastern Pacific around average. The Western Pacific is above average, especially north of Japan. I mean, those temperatures are anomalous over there. You can definitely tell with the amount of dark red that is overspreading the region. That is some pretty crazy temperatures going on there. Ocean heat content, we saw that death spot to the eastern Gulf of Mexico. The ocean heat content is still rising in the Caribbean, and there's a little pocket developing in the main development region. In the Western Pacific, it remains to be the same case, with a lot of that being in the east of the Philippines, and the Eastern Pacific still remaining lackluster in that department. So no changes there. Alright, looking at the short range in terms of the models, we're kicking it off with the Eastern Pacific, as you would expect given the fact that is where we're seeing everything right now. The initialized Darby a bit too weak, but regardless it is weakening, and it is going to be staying that case as it crosses over into the Central Pacific, probably becoming a remnant low shortly after. It could bring some heavy rain to Hawaii, but we will see a brave CPEC cyclone for the time being, but it won't be Hone. But going off into the next AOY that we're dealing with has the 80% chance. Models continue to want its formation, and the GFS follows suit, already pretty much bringing it to hurricane status by day 4. Not sure what's going on with that circulation to the west-southwest of it, but I wouldn't mind it too much, and eventually, by hour 120, the GFS already has a Category 3 intensity. So, I mean, the GFS always wants everything to be a Category 3, so in the Pacific at least, so I mean, I'm not sure what to take of this. Take of it as you will. We'll probably get a better idea of the intensity once this does get invested. Probably should be within the next 24 hours. So hopefully we get a better idea by tomorrow night. But in the meantime, the GFS is pretty much on its usual shenanigans, making everything a Category 3. Looking into the Western Pacific, just to give an idea of what's going on there, since we have what's been going on at least. You can see what ends up of 90W. It's not even on the map because there's practically nothing to it at this point, and really there's just nothing at all. So no development expected in the Western Pacific through day 5. It's all remaining quiet here. Looking at the longer range, we're obviously going to be looking at the Eastern Pacific with this area of interest, which is already a Category 3 by hour 120 per the GFS. Don't think it's going to be that strong, but you never know, especially for the fact that the 5-day formation chances are 80% and the 2 days are at 10 still. But assuming that's the case, the GFS continues to strengthen it, peaking it down to 951 millibars, which would make it the strongest run from this storm yet. That's probably high-end Category 3 right there. Maybe low-end Category 4 if it's lucky. And then eventually it does start to weaken somewhat, although it takes its time to do so. Still a Category 3 at hour 198, and eventually it weakens and becomes a remnant low pretty quickly. Probably a tropical storm by the time it's hour 240. Needless to say, I don't foresee this actually happening. But it is nice to know that they have trended to west for last night, as they did want to landfall in Baja California. Obviously, the forecast is going to change, we'll see what ends up happening, but this seems a bit aggressive as per usual from the GFS. Here is our shameless plug. You can visit the Force 13 store where you can buy merch, request animations, even get the latest stuff that we've added to the store, because there is quite a bit of new stuff. We also have our classic hoodies, even though it's freaking July, and of course a pillow that's probably way too small for you to sleep on. But if you really like it, I guess do whatever you want to do. Looking at the Scilly range, it seems we're back to our old ways with the Western Pacific, as it looks like there's already a tropical cyclone developing again at hour 240. And you can see what ends up of this. Ends up strengthening, deciding to become a typhoon naturally. And then it decides to go through the Okinawa Islands, past just the east of China, and if that wasn't weird enough, it decides to just flat out make landfall in North Korea. I wish I was kidding, but they want a Category 2 landfall in North Korea before it pretty much immediately dies and chills to the north of Japan. Yeah, another situation where a model run probably won't happen, but this is the GFS for you. Random ghost storms that do random things that probably isn't supposed to be happening on a normal basis. But I think it's safe to say, until then, for right now, in the immediate future, the Western Pacific will be remaining pretty quiet. Looking at the on this day, we're going back to 1965 for July 13th, and we had Super Typhoon Freda, which was about to make landfall in the Philippines. Luzon specifically is a Category 4, it would eventually go on and strike Hong Kong as well, killing 2 people there. The damage and fatalities in the Philippines, however, is very much unknown and still remains a mystery to this day. There was about to be another depression that was formed and would become Tropical Storm Gilda. That would have a short life before becoming a remnant low, and then eventually reforming and being a long-lasting tropical storm. Not much other than that going on. You can find more of our products powered by Cyclone History at the bottom bar tag below. So, with that being said, the next name in the Atlantic is Danielle, followed by Earl. In the Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for Estelle and Frank. And in the Central Pacific, while maybe Amazon Prime Day, there's definitely no faster or discounted way of getting Hone anytime soon. In the Western Pacific, the next 2 names here are Songda, followed by Trazes. And in the North Indian Ocean, the next 2 names here are Citrang, followed by Mandis. And it doesn't seem that I'll be seeing anything different in the North Indian Ocean anytime soon, given we're in the gap of season right now. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Darian and Ellie. In the southwestern Indian Ocean, we're looking out for Ashley and Belita. And in the South Pacific, we're looking out for Holly. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.